Hey guys, we are going to try to do this live, which might be a little bit risky considering this one's probably not going to let me. But if you viewed my invite video, then you know what is in store today. I wanted to share baby Ewok's birth story with you all, with a particular focus on what ended up being nearly my exclusive pain management technique, but also talk about the grieving process, essentially for when things don't go as planned. This should be like a great topic for any expecting mamas out there, especially first-time mamas. But I think partners and family that'll be present during the birth process can get a lot out of what I plan to talk about as well. The people attending your birth certainly play a very significant part in it. So please remember that. For me, it was one of the very few things that were truly crucial elements to the day. And I was very lucky to have a fantastic team with me. I'm going to jump right into our story. Little Miss Harlow Lee here finally made her way into this world on Saturday, January 6th. But for us, pre-labor actually lasted several days. They were a little stressful because I kept thinking I was going into labor, so the anticipation really started kicking in. I didn't really know what to expect. You'll read that you should give the birth center, midwife, or hospital a call, or head into the hospital, I should say, once your contractions are about 5 minutes apart or so for at least an hour. But you likely didn't read that, they can really fluctuate with intensity. They can start days in advance, and it all can lead to you feeling very, very confused. I started having irregular contractions early on that week, but I specifically remember things really picking up on Wednesday night while watching the X-Files. The pain became more intense, early on the week. I was like, oh, these are contractions. These are happening. The night of the X-Files, it was like, oh, these are contractions. These are happening. I'd have to walk the floor in order to not yell out or, become incredibly uncomfortable. They were anywhere from 4 to 15 minutes apart, though. And, the pain was enough to really keep me from getting a good night's rest at that point. So I figured, we were there. I was going into full-blown labor in the next 24 hours. But that ended up not being quite the case. Still, it threw me into a packing mode, and my birth center bag ended up maybe a little too full, but a little bit more on that later. If my arms weren't full, I'd show you exactly how full it became. On Thursday, my significant other, Carl, went into work thinking he'd be leaving early to come get me, take me to the birth center, but the contractions continued in a sporadic fashion for the next 48 hours. I made it to my pre-scheduled checkup on Friday, because at this point I was already a week and a half overdue, so I was going in every other day so that they could monitor her heart rate. They do what they call a non-stress test, where they basically are looking for particular rises in heart rate, and that show activity and that she has enough room to still move around and do what she needed to do in there. So we made it to that appointment, and come to find out, I wasn't even dilated at all. So all of the work that I thought my body had been doing over the last couple of days didn't amount to anything, which was a little frustrating, because at this point we began to talk about natural labor induction methods. I was 41 and a half weeks. This was like a conversation that I was not too fond of having. The birth center that I was at has a strict policy, which I wasn't aware of until this day, that at 42 weeks they are kind of forced, and I think it may be a bylaw thing, into induction. So at this point, I'm facing the weekend to naturally speed things up, or a hospital transfer for induction come the following Tuesday. And this is because a lot of increased risk factors can really come with that extra cooking time. Because the hospital was absolutely the last place that I wanted to be, I started a homeopathic treatment to kick things into higher gear. And had some other remedies on hand, like castor oil, just in case. So Friday night into Saturday morning, though, things really intensified, and it was clear that I wasn't going to need any of those extra remedies. I don't think I slept more than 30 minutes at all, or in all. All I could really do was walk around the house and breathe. I, tried to watch things on TV to distract myself. It just wasn't working. At one point around midnight, I called my midwife because I was looking at 30 30 minutes of contractions that were like 3 to 7 minutes apart, and I was worried that they were getting too close, especially those 3-minute ones. They're scary. But she told me to hop in the shower, relax, and call if they increased after that. They didn't. They actually stalled down a bit. Ended up back to their 4 to 15 minute kind of random pattern until around 4:30 in the morning, when I was looking at very consistent 3 to 5 minutes between contractions that were pretty much overlapping each other. Each one was lasting several minutes. They were really intense, and while I could talk through contractions, I certainly didn't want to. That was actually one of my problems. Is I guess I have a higher pain tolerance than most, and my midwife didn't seem to think that like I was legit in labor because of the way that I was dealing with things. But we did make a plan at that point to meet at the birth center in about an hour. So we took the dogs out, fed the cat, completed the last minute dash, and I set out in a nightgown, bathrobe, socks, and boots. No joke, in like 20-degree weather. I was so uncomfortable at that point that real clothes were just not an option. I was also strep B positive, so the first thing that we needed to do was get an IV started so we could get antibiotics into my system. My midwife, who was amazing, unfortunately blew my vein out like 4 times, so we were off to a great start at 5:30 in the morning. Now, how far dilated was I? 3 centimeters. I thought the midwife was going to send me home, but thankfully she didn't. And 2 hours later, the next midwife took over, who was equally as awesome. Obviously everybody has their own birth plans and ideals for birth, but for me, I just wanted to be as natural as possible. And if you have a birth center near you, I would highly recommend that you at least check it out. The midwife experience is truly, truly phenomenal. Now, you can have a hospital birth and choose to have a doula or a midwife present to assist with the process. Depending on the hospital, they may or may not let the midwife be close in on the process. But that's maybe for another time. So anyway, our second midwife, came in, took over. And at this point, I'm actually going to pause our birth story for a minute to talk about what was in the birth center bag, what I packed versus what I actually used. So I packed a Bluetooth speaker, headphones, extra chargers for our phones, because I was convinced that this baby was either going to rock her way into the world, or I was going to have guided meditations that I was going to be following the entire time, or my solfeggio frequencies. So we were all ready for that. Brought my essential oils and my diffuser. We brought body massage oils. I had big plans for aromatherapy and body massage, tennis balls for massage. Crystals, and a ton of them, including this giant black obsidian sphere, because I was going to make this awesome energy grid right by my bedside. Cloth diapers, all different kinds, because I had no idea how big this one was going to come out, and what option was going to work best. So we just brought them all. Wipes, baby blankets, 4 changes of clothes for the baby, because again, who knows what size she was going to be, what is she going to fit into, how cold is it really going to be once we leave. 4 changes of clothes for me, just because, what am I going to be comfortable in? Am I going to want to labor in this? Am I going to want to labor in that? When I leave, how comfortable are my regular clothes going to be? You lose a lot of weight and you're pushing that all out, but you're still a little bit bigger than normal. So there was just all these options. I needed all these options. A boppy or a My Breast Friend nursing pillow. A pacifier, which you're not even supposed to use until weeks after they're born, because it really can mess up the nursing process. But why not be fully prepared? A bathing suit, because I had a water birth planned, so that was something that I deemed necessary. Feminine products and frozen adult diapers, which was a YouTube trick that I had learned. But what did I use? Nothing. Seriously, I think I had a crystal in my hand at one point that I'd carried in my pocket, and I did use a bunch of peppermint essential oil, but that was actually not even from my own stock. That was to quell my nausea, but they had the whole place fully stocked, so I didn't even need my own. I will say, though, if you're not, in a birth center environment, and that's likely not on hand, make sure you have a bottle of peppermint oil with you. I didn't even think about that leading into it. But once things really got intense, once I was at the center, I started to get nauseous, very, very nauseous. And The peppermint oil was just an absolute lifesaver. It took it away in an instant. It was absolutely amazing. So definitely add that to your list no matter what. But I rocked my bathrobe when I wanted to walk the facility. And that was about it. Why did I use nothing else? Well, that was a combination of primal instinct kicking in and the hospital transfer. So back to the birth story. As soon as I decided that I wanted to get into the hot tub for some pain relief, I realized that at that point that wearing clothes or, even a bathing suit was pretty pointless. Like my midwife was going to be catching a baby for me in a few hours, and my significant other was the only other person I chose to have present. So really, why was I going to bother with clothes? That pretty much wiped out half the bag. Warm water, though, was an absolute fantastic relief. I was lucky enough to have an option of a water birth room and this luxurious deep hot tub. But even if you don't have that available to you, a hot shower will make a world of difference. I spent the majority of the day jumping between the hot tub and the shower, and thankfully the center that I was at is equipped with 5 hot water heaters to keep up. And that was one of the few questions that I had going into it, was am I gonna run out of hot water? But no, I didn't, and it was fantastic and wonderful. So staying hydrated was a key part, since I was standing in these hot temperatures, basically sweating everything out. My boyfriend made sure that I was getting some energy and continuing some calorie intake. At one point, I demanded apples. An awesome friend of mine, we'd brought some food as well that we'd thrown into the freezer, but I wanted apples, and we didn't bring apples. So an awesome friend of mine, Rob, thank you very much, made a drive to the center to drop off some delicious apples. They were fantastic. And Carl fed me slices through the shower curtain while I stood for what felt like hours on end, just letting the water hit me and breathing through my contractions. Being hand-fed apples is pretty cool, during labor. I felt quite privileged to have that sort of hand-to-hand service. Carl was phenomenal for me. He was just an absolute rock. For anyone that knows us personally, he can be anxiety-ridden and really a frantic mess at times. But he was so incredibly calm, cool, collected, and caring that it really made it easy for me to stay in my zone. My midwife was equally as amazing. She continued to encourage me throughout the entire process. She was checking the baby's heart rate every 10 minutes or so, making sure everything was fine. Things looked great. They were progressing at a steady pace, a little bit slow, since it was my first time, but it was normal. And as she said, I was breathing that baby down beautifully. So what about breathing? I have to admit, I did not do any prep leading up to labor. Well, I shouldn't say any, but I did very little prep leading up to labor. I had wanted to do hypnobirthing, but the classes were way too expensive. And then I started reading some books, and it was very flowery for me. The whole picture your vagina as a flower opening up, all that kind of stuff. I'm no. Mm-mm. So while I read through some of some of the hypnobirthing book and techniques, I did some research on YouTube for mostly meditation and hypnobirthing, again, breathing techniques. But there wasn't really much other prep leading up to labor. I knew it was a very natural process, and I didn't feel like I needed it. For me, it was a way to reduce the unnecessary fear. I knew the more and more time that I spent researching, the more and more horror stories I would come across. And it just, for me, I didn't feel it necessary. Of course, your path may be completely different, and it probably is if you're still listening to this video and tuning in. But I had spent the 2 weeks prior researching all sorts of breathing and meditation techniques, pain management, hypnobirthing. I had a bunch of videos saved on YouTube, and I was planning to rotate through, see what worked best as I was actually in the heat of it. But I didn't use any of it. I didn't need to. My yoga breath was all that I needed. A large majority of us, especially Americans, don't utilize anywhere near our full lung capacity. We have, very shallow breaths, particularly as the American society. There's so much power behind the breath that we do not tap into. There's tons of research out there, regarding the positive effects of deep, controlled breathing on the body. It significantly reduces stress. It relaxes your muscles. It lowers your blood pressure. Therefore, your heart is not working as hard. Boosts your metabolism. It increases your oxygen levels and that oxygen flow throughout your entire body. It kicks all of your systems into high gear, which helps boost your lymphatic system, which can increase your immune system defenses and really help detox your body. But most importantly, and those of you, well, at least most importantly in this scenario, for those of you who practice yoga and meditation, then you know this without a doubt. Focusing on your breath, no matter how you choose to breathe, can really clear your mind. And when you're a first-time mama, especially facing a long day of labor, you certainly benefit from being as clear-headed as possible. It's very, very easy to let fear slip into your thoughts. And that's really the last thing that you want happening when you're facing so much unknown. And especially if things start to go awry, panic is the last thing that you need. And what do you really know about the labor process going into it, again, for first-time mamas? You can read all you want and prepare yourself all you want, but at the end of the day, there's only really 3 things that are absolute truths. And it's a very natural process. We were born to do this. So natural process, truth number 1. At the end, you have the ultimate reward. And you know that it's all going to be worth it. But what is the third thing that we know? It hurts like hell if you're having a natural birth. And if you're not, the epidural, whatever you decide, whatever route you decide to take, it's still going to hurt. So you're going to be facing some pain. So again, it's really easy to let fear slip in. What if this goes wrong? What if I can't take the pain? This is the most natural process that your body can go through as a woman, and you were built to do it. And that's kind of what you need to remember. You can do it. That's all you need to know going in. So in my opinion, knowing that and just for me, breath was truly like the key to not losing my mind during labor. So for me, my yoga breath is a very deep in. As I breathe in, I open, my clavicle, my chest, down into my belly. I expand into my Buddha belly. And on the exhale of that, I'm pushing things up, out, and kind of like a Darth Vader voice. If you drop your tongue from the roof of your mouth a little bit and just allow the air to escape naturally up the back of your throat, kind of in the same manner that it is brought in, and back out your nose. That for me worked really well. So I was breathing very, very deeply down in and then out, letting that escape through my nose like that. My boyfriend kept telling me to breathe out my mouth, and it wasn't working. That's not my yoga breath. I needed my deep in and out. And for me, when I meditate, I tend to envision a white light coming down through the top, with my breath down into my body, into my belly, expanding out into my belly where all of that pain was happening. I'm envisioning a white light just kind of enveloping the baby, good positive energy for her, and that light pushing all of the pain out and expanding those muscles so that I wasn't holding on to as much pain. And then on the exhale, I envisioned a darker, almost smoke-like coming up and out. And to me, that was the pain and the fear getting pushed out and expelled and away. At the same time, on that exhale, I was also keeping in mind that original white light coming down and continuing to push her even further down and out. So on the exhale, you've got 2, visually in my mind, I've got 2 different things going on. Her going down and getting pushed out with all that good positive energy, and my actual exhale bringing out all of the pain and all of the fear and all of the negativity. So for me, that was just my technique. That was my meditation that I stuck with. It was very, very simple, but I stuck with it all day long. I became so rhythmic that I actually numbed my entire body. At one point, I was sitting in the hot tub, which was, absolutely fantastic. If you have a chance to do a water birth, even though I didn't unfortunately get to see it, I didn't get to deliver that way, just laboring in it was absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend you consider that and check that out. But from here down, I completely numbed my body. Like I could feel I still had feeling, but everything was light, weightless, a little bit tingly. It was an incredible feeling. My midwife was a little nervous. I think she probably thought that it was more due to the heat that I'd been putting myself through in the hot tub. But I fully believe that it was just the, relaxation breathing that I was doing. Sorry. And the breathing worked so well that during the middle of the day, I actually decided I needed to take a walk. So I got back into my bathrobe and I lapped the center. And I went into this awesome common area that have these big, bright, beautiful windows and the most comfortable lazy boy rocking chairs that you will ever encounter. This is where the unthinkable happened. I somehow was able to nap in the middle of hardcore labor. Thanks to my breathing and a wonderful, wonderful pressure technique that my midwife had applied. I laid on my side, kind of in fetal position on the chair, and through the contractions, she was pushing up into my abdomen, like the side of my abdomen, and really relieving a lot of the pain and the pressure, whatever was going on at the time. When I was in the tub, she had done a similar thing to my back, where she put her hands just above my hips, pushed in and up. And that was really, really helpful. That was something that she taught my partner as well. And I'm assuming that, this was kind of a modified version of that as I was laying on my side on this chair. So yeah, I didn't get to sleep, but I zoned out to the point of just pure bliss, and I got some really nice rest in. It was beautiful. So all in all, we were having an absolutely wonderful birthing experience. My midwife called the nurse in because she thought I was getting close. I think this was sometime around 4:30. She called the nurse in. I can't remember exactly, but I want to say at this point I was fully dilated. I know that I was fully dilated. She was down to stage 0, meaning her head was right at my pelvic bone. At that point, anything forward was her kind of getting out. And then it all flipped on me. The next time that my midwife went to check my progress, she realized that my water, which we thought had already broken a couple hours before that, had actually just broke, and we were dealing with a meconium show. So in layman's terms, little baby Ewok decided to poop while she was cooking in me. And yeah, you hear that? I'm telling everybody that the first thing you did was poop. You were covered in poop when you were born. Oh, she's not happy that I said that. Oh, I'm sorry that I said that. Now the world knows. Now, this is an automatic transfer to the hospital, the last place that I wanted to be. But when this happens, there is a very significant increase in respiratory risk. So they require a full medical team present. The baby can essentially fill their passageways up and be unable to breathe once they do make it out. It was as if my body went into shock at this point. Instantly, my contractions separated and they were back to 7 to 10 minutes apart. They were nowhere near as intense as they had been. So I was disappointed, but at the same time, I was like, all right, well, I can just continue this process when we get there. So we layered back up, headed 15 minutes down 95 to the hospital. I was quiet. I was sad. I was processing everything that I had been through all day. I was so proud of myself, for making it as far as I had. I had been so strong. I'd made it almost all the way through. No screaming, no tears, no begging for pain meds, no thoughts that I couldn't take it. And then all of a sudden, it just felt like it all came crashing down, and I felt defeated, and almost like I didn't care anymore. I just wanted it to be over, and if that meant an epidural and a C-section, then so be it. I was just so defeated at that point. That's really the only thing that I can say. But then we get to the hospital and we get settled into the room, and I reminded myself that I could still, have a natural birth, just like I wanted, just not in the setting that I hoped for. So at this point, I made what I considered to be my only mistake, and I don't want the people who were in there to feel like they did anything wrong. But I let a few extra folks into the room with me, and I don't think I should have ever done that. My mom, my best friend, and my boyfriend's sister, who all were wonderful, very caring, just wanted to see the best for me. They really distracted me from getting back into the zone that I had been in. And the next thing, while I had started to get back into a little bit of rhythm and progress again, And baby was actually down to stage 3 or 4, which is essentially almost out. Her heart rate dropped, and my midwife alerted the doctor. Because I had pushed her so far down at this point, the monitors were really having trouble picking her up. And the nurses and the doctor were flipping me over on all fours, trying to get a good read on her. My mom in particular didn't fully understand what was happening at this time, and thought that they were, like, not getting a reading on her at all. Are you eating my arm? So, she begins to lose her composure. Luckily at this point, I was still strong enough in my mental focus that I was able to block out the chaos and kind of just keep breathing. Say hey, baby Ewok. Oh man, you just ate my arm. Say hi, baby Ewok. Look, say hi. Say hi. She's getting hungry. I'm going to have to wrap this up. But, I knew I was okay, and that I knew that the baby was in no immediate danger, so I just kept breathing. But the doctor, unfortunately, came in and gave me 10 minutes to get her out. But, due to the chaos that was happening around me, my body just lost rhythm again, and the contractions just weren't effective. Like, that was it. Like, I had failed, and I was headed for a C-section. Getting wheeled down the hallway, my contractions finally wanted to do something, but I was being told to stop, and to fight it against them. And, she was there, she was crowning, she was almost out, and once again, I was defeated. The rest of it is a bit of an intentional blur, because, it was the last thing that I wanted to deal with. But I remember my midwife saying goodbye to me, because she wasn't allowed into the C-section. It was just Carl and I at that point. I remember her telling me that, I had done all that I could possibly do, and that this is what was best for us. And deep down in my heart, I knew that this was what was best for her, and that was what got me through. So I just continued to breathe, but I was still so, so sad. I felt like I was letting my baby down. All the hard work that I had been, had put in an attempt to stay clean and pure for her was, throughout my entire pregnancy, was about to get washed out in the prick of the spinal tap. And that was actually amazingly pain-free, thanks to the numbing effect that I had breathed myself into. I remember laying my head on the nurse's chest and trying not to spaz during contractions as they pushed it in, and then it was nothing but numbness and cold. But I'm strapped to the table in blood pressure cuffs like Jesus Christ, and I can see reflections of blood in this like hive-like light that is hanging above me. And I can feel them pushing and pulling and just prodding around as they cut me open and root around my insides. It was the weirdest, creepiest, strangest feeling ever. She was so far down that they had to push her back up and get her out. And I just remember feeling that pressure so distinctly. It was just such an odd, bizarre, almost like out of body experience. Then after what felt like a lifetime of just being strapped there, freezing cold, I remember them calling out 10:20 p.m. and hearing her scream, and I was just so happy to hear her scream. But then instantly, again, so sad that she was 15 feet away from me, surrounded by doctors and nurses rather than in my arms. All I could do was turn my head sideways and look at her to try to get a good glance. But then I watched Carl walk up and talk to her, and her wailing was instantly silenced. It was so incredibly beautiful. They asked me to guess her weight. The nurse that was standing above me guessed 7-something, so I went lower. I said 6'10", I think, something like that. This little nugget came out 5 pounds, 8 ounces. 5 pounds, 8 ounces. She was only 17 inches long. Oh, no. Harlow! I'm gonna stop moving you around so much. I'm sorry. Somehow, big old, sturdy old me produced this little tiny angel of a baby. So for that reason, all the cloth diapers that I packed, all the clothes that we packed, they were completely useless because nothing fit her. We ended up having to get a whole bunch of preemie stuff and buy newborn infant diapers, which I'll do a little bit more on cloth diapering in another post for sure. Again, I said we're gonna have to wrap this up because she's getting cranky. But a minute or so later, she was all cleaned up and brought over to me for a quick Eskimo kiss. Give me no Eskimo kisses. No Eskimo kisses. While they finished stitching me up. I was shivering. I was shaking. I was freezing. I was just cold. I had this reaction, to the meds. I'm still strapped down. It was awful. I couldn't move, other than the shivering. But I continued to breathe as I had been because, I knew that it was all that had gotten me through the entire day, and I knew that it was all that I had. My blood pressure was actually incredibly low the entire time, even through the stressful, processes, especially right before, getting the C-section. I never even hit your normal average of 120/80, and I know that was all due to the power of my breath. But the next 24 hours really felt like a stressful mess. I didn't get into the room until 3:30 a.m. Into my actual room. Oh, baby girl, it's okay. Carl left shortly thereafter to go home and take care of the pups. I remember getting her fed and asleep and finally feeling a bit of relaxation myself, and the nurse busted in for vitals for both of us and to get me out of bed and moving because, right after a C-section, they have to do that like 6 hours after or something like that. The rest of my day was a revolving door. It was breakfast, church volunteers, photography groups, this doctor, that doctor, nurse after nurse. Because she was born so small, they were doing glucose testing every few hours. Despite her levels being perfectly normal, they were completely fine, and they still continued to do the testing routinely. It was a very frustrating process for me. They're pumping pain meds into me even though I didn't want them. They're just pumping me full of things that I didn't need. Obviously I needed an epidural before getting my abdomen completely sliced open, but the things afterwards, I felt like I didn't even have a choice in, and here it's all going on. So anyway, she was also a little jaundice, and that led to extra testing, and it also led to her being under the lights for a full day, which she absolutely hated. She wailed and wailed. She wasn't sleeping. And I just felt so completely helpless, like from the drugs coursing through our veins, the constant poking and prodding she experienced, every inconvenience that I could have possibly wanted to avoid. So my defeated stance at that point really turned into anger. Every time there was another knock at the door, I was just like so happy to hold her in my arms, but I wanted nothing more than for us to escape. At the 48-hour mark, things finally started to calm down, and our last day at the hospital was very relaxing, peaceful. It was filled with fantastic workers who really respected that I didn't want to be there, and I just wanted some space with my baby. And she's beautiful. She's amazing. She's absolutely wonderful, and maybe she wasn't at all fazed by everything that happened to her. I have no way of knowing that. I never will know that. But it was very difficult. The hospital transfer was one thing. It was very difficult for me to deal with the C-section and just the trauma that followed after that for her. So acceptance. This is 3 weeks later, and I'm still crying. Acceptance was kind of just what came next. Allow yourself to be sad that your birth plan didn't go the way that you wanted it to. I had a friend that texted me a couple days before and said, really prepare yourself in case things don't go the way that you want. I want to make sure that you're in a good mindset for that. And I kind of was just like, internally anyway, I don't think I said anything to her, but I kind of was like, well, that's not going to happen. I'm in perfectly good health. We've had a wonderful pregnancy. She's going to be wonderful. Things are going to be great. I was keeping a positive mindset, which is good. But I guess I really hadn't processed what could possibly be. And honestly, going into it, I don't really know that you can. You can never really fully prepare yourself for that. You just have to accept that it is what it is, and things are going to go the way that they're going to go. And for me, it was the power of breath that really got me through that, and knowing that I had a team around me that was making the decisions that were best for me and the baby. So post, I feel great. I feel wonderful. Like, she is just fantastic. The only thing that makes me sad is when I think about the fact that I ended up strapped to that table in an emergency C-section. And it's because she decided to tie a knot in her cord, a true knot, which means she flipped around in my belly and got a knot in her cord that was tied tight, like a true knot. So who knows if the cord would even have been long enough to get her out naturally. We don't even know that. But when they pulled her out, they said it was a true knot, so, they had definitely made the right call. So that's it. You can do all of the planning in the world, or you can do none of the planning in the world. And it really doesn't matter, because nothing is going to prepare you for, what is going to be your labor process. And that's going to be unique. Your birth story is going to be unique. And as much as you want it to go one way, it might not. And you won't know. You won't know until you're in it and you're out of it and you're sharing it like I am right now. I think this is kind of the last step that I need was to really get it out there in the open and share it with people, other than my significant other and my very close friends. I think hopefully this is the last part of the grieving process for me, because it is that you're grieving, the loss of your plan. That if you are like me and you wanted to have a natural birth for the reasons that I did, then, it can really mess you up and it can really rock your world. But it doesn't matter, because they're the most gorgeous things in the face of the planet. So speaking of gorgeous, this girl has she has her own hashtag on Instagram and Facebook, I think, but I'm not sure my privacy settings. Harlow, Harlo. Lee, Leigh. Hashtag Harlow Lee. HarloLeigh. You can see this little cutie. Oh! And she's so hungry for milkies right now. Oh! So we are breastfeeding. That process is actually going very, very well. I have some friends who are having difficulties, so I kind of feel bad even saying that. Hey! So I do feel bad even saying that, but things are going really, really well, and I will share in the future, more on that, more on cloth diapering, more on the fantastic and not so fantastic baby products that we have so far. But don't worry, the channel's not going totally baby-centric. We've got other stuff as well. But I promised that I would introduce you all to her and share your birth story, so I've done that. Since she is wailing right now, I'm going to get going. But, if you guys have any questions, pop them down into the comments below. I don't see any chatting going on right now, which is fine. But if you have questions, pop them down. I'll definitely address them at another time. And peace, love, and light to all of you guys. Baby Harlow and Mama Ewok. Baby Ewok and Mama Ewok are out. Thanks, guys. Have a good night. Enjoy your weekend. Oh!